Welcome back to Miking Disciples. This is another episode of our new podcast for men. I'm Mike, and I'm trying to help make disciples of men here at High Point Church, and so I'm really glad that you've joined us. I am the ministry development pastor here at High Point, and I'm excited to spend this time with you today and talk to you a little bit more about what it means to be a man of God. In the studio with us is a great man of God, someone that I've admired and wanted to follow for a very long time. His name is Jeff Moran. Jeff is my father-in-law, but also has been a pastor for many, many years and so influential in my life and in the lives of others. And so, Jeff, I want to welcome you. I've been excited to have you on here and share a little bit about what you know about following the Lord. And it's not just a little bit, you know quite a lot, and I've learned a lot from you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in ministry and how God has used you over the years.
Okay, thank you, first of all, for having me on the podcast. Might I say, as a 76-year-old man, this is my first podcast.
There you go. You're a pro.
So, I'm a technical genius.
That's right.
Yeah. I am glad to be here with you, Mike, and appreciate you a lot. As a young man, as a boy, really, I was brought up in the church. I didn't like to go to church, but I didn't have a choice. I never once asked to stay home because I knew that wouldn't do me any good. But I am thankful now for that and for my parents and the way that they brought me up, with knowing what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ and to give your heart and life to Him fully. So that was sort of my beginnings, was in a very evangelical, what was called a holiness Methodist, United Methodist Church, and that's my background, and I'm thankful for it. It was be old-fashioned to me now, but I really needed it at that time.
Tell us a little bit about growing up in that church. What was that like? When did you become a Christian, and when did you feel a calling to be a pastor?
Well, as I say, brought up in the church, I was there. If the doors were open, we were there. My dad, he just wouldn't miss. Some people mistakenly think my dad was a pastor. He was not. He was a welder in a steel mill for 30-some years, but he loved the Lord. But in that church, I learned from an early age what it meant to be a follower of Christ. I needed to make that decision myself. My parents couldn't do it for me. The church couldn't do it for me, but they gave me every opportunity. The pastors that were there were very faithful preachers of the gospel, and preachers of making Him the Lord of your life, and being willing to do whatever God wanted you to do. So I'm thankful for that. It was at about the age of 16, though, that I, sitting in church, far back as I could sit, that my parents would allow me, and the Lord was speaking to my heart. Now, He had spoken to me many times. That altar call was given, and I was able to fight it off, but I couldn't this night. It was so clear to me that He was saying, Jeff, you're 16 years old. You need to make up your mind. Are you going to follow me or not? And clear as a bell in my heart, He said, tonight's the night. If you don't do it tonight, you might never do it. So I still hesitated for a little while, but I made my way to that altar that night and praying for the Lord to forgive me, to be my Savior. And as was always the case in my life, my father, my dad, was kneeling beside me, praying for me. My grandfather, Moran, on the other side, praying for me. And God came into my heart that night. And that was the beginning of what life was about to become because of Jesus Christ.
There's probably a man that's listening to this and going, okay, I'm at a place where God is calling me to make a decision to get off the fence and decide to follow him. And, they're thinking about, well, where is that going to take me? Am I going to have to go to seminary or to the mission field in a foreign country, or what does that mean? And, the truth is we don't always know, but talk to someone that may be listening to this just right off the top, who is considering making a decision to follow Jesus, and they're scared to do that because they don't know what is up ahead of them once they do, or if they do.
Yes, that's the first step, and it's not the end; it's the beginning.
Right.
And so you need to continue to seek what God wants for your life. That's what I did, even as a teenager. I was seeking. I wanted what God wanted for me. But at the same time, I had my own plans. And I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I really did. I was going to teach. I was going to coach. I love basketball. I wanted to coach basketball. I wanted to coach young men. I told the Lord, look at the witness I could be to those young fellas in that locker room for you. But there was, I don't even know what term to use, whether nagging would be a good term or not, but the Spirit continued to speak to me. He continued to speak to me about going into the ministry, and I did not want to do that. I had an uncle that was a minister. I had a older brother that was, and I thought, Lord, 2 preachers in one family, that's enough for any family, probably more than enough for any family. But in my heart, there was a continual, Jeff, you need to do what I want you to do. And I want you to go into the ministry. I want you to be a pastor and a preacher. And finally, one night, I was at an altar prayer at Hollow Rock Camp meeting. And I went to the altar that night seeking the Lord's will again. I wanted to know. And that was the night kneeling there that he made it clear to me that you need to do what I'm telling you to do, and that's to go into the ministry. Now, that doesn't mean he couldn't have used me as a teacher and a coach. He could have. Maybe there's men out there listening to this, and you're not supposed to be a preacher. I hope not everybody wants to be a preacher. That's just way too many. But whatever God's calling you to, say yes to it.
Yeah.
And my dad, again, as always, was kneeling right beside me. And when I stood up, I said, Dad, I really believe the Lord wants me to go into the ministry. I think maybe I was hoping he'd say, oh, Jeff, we got plenty of ministers. You don't need to do that. But no, my dad said, Jeff, whatever the Lord wants you to do, that's what you got to do. So that's how it all started. He helped me through college and seminary and led me into pastoral ministry. I'm thankful for it. That's been 50 plus years that I've been preaching and pastoring churches. And I'm thankful for it. God has been faithful the whole way. One of the problems was I was in love with a girl and we were going to get married. And in fact, we got married and then I decided to become a pastor. She thought she was marrying a teacher and a coach, but she ended up being married to a pastor. And for those of you who don't realize it, a pastor's wife is a very special calling.
Right.
It's not easy.
Oh, yeah.
At all. But she has been perfect for me and for the churches we've been in. So even after the fact, she still accepted the call as well. And we've been serving the Lord together for, like I say, 50 plus years.
Yeah, that's amazing. Talk to us about the churches that you served over those years. Where did you get started all the way up to what you're doing now?
Well, after I accepted that call, I changed my courses in college. I was in college for two 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And so I'm changing to try to get some Bible and theology and stuff like that to help prepare me, which I did. And at the same time, I began to pray, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, I'd like to start. Even now, what could there be a place where I could serve? So a friend of mine who was serving a little Methodist church out in the hills of Kentucky, Mount Beulah United Methodist Church, he was leaving, and he wanted to know if I'd be interested. And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. And it was a great church. I'm going to say we probably had 100 people, something like that. And they were so good to me. I look back on some of the outlines of messages that I preached, and I think, Lord, why didn't they run me out?
I was just doing that for myself yesterday. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, you want to do, but you're still learning. I was still learning. And but they blessed us, they helped us, they prayed for us, they took care of us, and really prepared us for what was ahead. Then we ended up back in Ohio. I was in the United Methodist Church at the time. We served a number of churches in Ohio. And there came a point in time when we felt like we needed to move from the church we were serving. We'd been there 9 years, which was a long time for a United Methodist minister
Right.
in East Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And we were always a wonderful ministry. We loved the church. But the Lord was, I guess, put a longing in our hearts, both of us, that it was time to move. So in the course of how all that worked out, we ended up transferring our credentials to Eastern Region of Evangelical Friends and moving to Florida. And that's where we started, in a little pole barn. This probably isn't a great thing to share, but the first Sunday I preached, we had about 50 people. The second Sunday I preached, we had about 20. And those other 30, as far as I know, never came back.
Okay.
I don't know why, but that's between them and the Lord and me and the Lord.
Yeah.
But that's where he had us. And moved our family from Ohio. Our kids were junior high and high school. It was hard on them. I guess I didn't think about it, but it was hard on them. Though they did make the adjustment, I think, pretty well. And so we started there, and we were thankful the Lord brought us there. Over the course of the years, I think it was after about 5 years, we just weren't getting anywhere. We still had about the same amount of people, a little more. We didn't have a nice building for people to come to. That's not an excuse. That's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And at about 5 years, I thought, I've made a mistake. I know the Lord doesn't make mistakes. So I was the one that made the mistake. And I began to look for other work. I thought, well, I can't go back to Ohio, anywhere there. And I guess you got something else for me here, Lord. And I started applying places, teaching and other things. And but nothing happened. Mm-hmm. All those doors closed. That'd be a good message series, wouldn't it? Doors.
Yeah.
I think it would be great.
We'll get on that.
Somebody ought to do that.
Yeah. If you don't know, we're just finishing a series on doors here at High Point, so it's been good talking about some of those things.
Yeah, it's been great for me because I have seen the doors that God shuts and nobody can open. But anyhow, so we stayed, and 24 years later, I retired from that church. Yeah. And God had blessed it. Some unusual things went on there. Not normal things for churches that the Lord did. But so for 24 years, and then I retired for the first time.
First time. Yeah. And I met you at that pole barn church. That's when your daughter and I started dating. I met her in college. We were, quote unquote, just friends. and you were coming to pick her up one day, and I was in the student center. You were walking through, and she introduced me to you. I remember I was playing a game of ping pong. I stopped long enough to high five you and went back to the game. I should have probably been in class a lot more often than the student center, but there I was that day. That was our first encounter. And then, as Kelly and I started dating and got married, then we started to spend a lot more time together. I did visit at that church several times with you guys. So I do remember the pole barn days and the small, intimate, close-knit fellowship that you were a part of. And but over the years, I saw God build that and do some of those incredible things and really change some lives, including my own. That's where we were when we were called into ministry. I was studying to be a physical therapist. And like you, I had a different plan, and I thought, I'd been playing college baseball and got hurt, had to go to physical therapy, and I thought I could do this for a living. And that was a great plan that I had for us. And but God obviously changed that and later called me into ministry. And I still remember when I was called, we had been there, and I was an elder at the church there. And I couldn't even call you and tell you because you guys were on a trip to Israel. So I had to wait like 2 weeks for you to get back. But when I did, we had some of the same conversations probably that you and your dad did. You didn't stop me. You encouraged me. You did everything you could to help me in that area. And I'm grateful for that. So I'm one of those people that was changed because of that in those 24 years. And there's many more stories of what God did there. And so, but I want to hear about where God took you when you retired the first time.
Well, when we retired, we were living in Florida, of course, and we retired to Ohio. Now, that's backwards of what most people do.
Right.
Yeah. Most people retire in Ohio, come to Florida. We did it just the opposite. But we went back to Ohio, and we had family there. And we started attending a church, Cypress Church, in Galloway, Columbus area. And we really enjoyed the church. And I was trying to do some other things. I was substitute teaching and some other things. And I think it was in maybe a year or two, something like that. There was a church in North Carolina that opened up. They were going to get a new pastor. And so I went there as an interim pastor, spent 2.5, 3 years maybe there. And it was a great time for us. So I unretired, went back to a church. And we loved our time there. They were wonderful people, Pine Hill Church. And they were wonderful people. They were really helpful to us at a time in our lives. I'm going to say the worst time of our lives up until then, and still the worst time in our lives, because our daughter, your wife, got breast cancer and eventually died from it. And that church loved us so and just wrapped their arms around us to help us. We were closer to you guys then, to Florida, because of North Carolina, and we could get there in a day. And in fact, Marty started flying back and forth.
That's right.
And you guys came up even for Thanksgiving, I believe it was.
It was. Mm-hmm.
The church had a special prayer meeting for you. And I can remember two of the women laying their hands on Kelly and praying for her healing. And man, I got excited. I thought, oh, Lord, you're going to heal her, and she's going to have a testimony like you won't believe. Thank you, Lord, for doing that. But it didn't work out that way.
Right.
She passed away. So I had a choice to make, Mike. Lord, you've been faithful to me all these years. And we prayed for her healing. Many people prayed for her healing.
Oh, around the country.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness. Mm-hmm. And yet, she ain't with us anymore. And I had a choice to make, almost like I did back when I was 16. I had to decide, am I going to follow the Lord and trust him, even though I don't understand it? Or I'm going to just quit. I'm done with you, Lord. If you can't do this, then I'm done with you. Oh, Mike, I'm so thankful the Lord didn't let go of me.
Yeah.
And didn't let me make that stupid decision to turn him off and go my own way. Because he's been faithful to help comfort. Oh, I miss her every day. I know you do too. But God knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we had to trust. But I got there because that church loved us the way they loved us and helped us through that time of our sorrow. So God's been good to us. Then I retired again.
Second time.
I'm getting this down.
Yeah, you're pretty good at it.
My son says I know how to retire. I just don't know how to stay retired.
Yeah.
I think he must be right.
He's right, yeah.
So we went back to Columbus again and back into church. And we'd come to Florida again for winter, for a couple months in the winter. And I got a call from the church, and they said the minister of senior adults was retiring. Would I be interested in that job? Would I take some time and pray and ask the Lord? And I said, well, I'll be glad to do that. And I did. But I already knew the answer because God had already been dealing with me about that exact ministry opportunity. In fact, the man that was retiring, I've known him all my life. And the first Sunday we were in that church, I saw him. 1,000 people in that building, and there he was. So we restarted our relationship. And he came to me one day and he said, Jeff, I believe the Lord wants you to take my place when I retire. Now, this is a couple years before he retires. And I said, oh, Ted, we'll let the Lord take care of that, not us. Well, that's exactly what happened. And I was so thankful. I knew it was what God wanted. There was no doubt in my mind. And it's been a great blessing for me ever since. Now, we've been doing that since about 2017, I guess it was. So, wow, it's going to be 9 years in May.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that till just now. That's a long time for an old man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was old when I started. But I'm thankful again for that opportunity now at my stage of life.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is, I have seen and been a part of praying with you through all of those moves and to a church and into retirement and to another church and into retirement again and into a church. But God just continues to use you, and you talked about the gentleman that was leading, that was in that role, director of senior adults at Cypress Church before you. You had known him all your life. And so it's interesting to think about. And that's a question I want to ask you next about who were some of those men in those early years when you were just seeking God about this call and when you were serving at those early churches and in Florida and in North Carolina and now here. Who were some of those people, those men that poured into you, and what was it about them that made you want what they had?
Well, the first man that I have to mention is my own father. My dad was, like I said, he just an average guy. I think he quit school in the 8th grade. The way he treated his teachers, he probably should have quit before that. But he was just an ornery guy. And but because of him and his faith, he was real.
Yeah.
He wasn't phony.
And he had the greatest World War II stories.
Oh,
he
my
could
goodness.
tell stories like
we don't even want to get into that.
Yeah, that's another episode.
That's a whole new episode. Well, probably an episode you don't want to do, actually.
Maybe so.
So that was the first person. And both of my grandfathers in different ways. But then, and I'm going to use a strange word for many listening, 2 words, Sunday school.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you remember that at all?
We can describe that later in the show notes if you need to know what that is.
So they had classes for every age group of boys. And started like in junior high, I remember the guy that was our teacher. He was great. He was a funny guy. He was outgoing. He loved Jesus. He wanted to teach us. And he not only taught us through the material and Bible, those things, but also his way of life. And then there was another man when I was in high school and taught us. He was pitiful. He was boring. Man, we couldn't hardly stay awake. But you know what? That man loved us. And we couldn't hardly wait in some ways for him to quit teaching and just talk to us. But he loved us. And throughout the remainder of my life, he was a man that I knew loved the Lord, and I could go to him, and he would be willing to listen and talk to me. He might bore me with the answer, but I would listen because I knew he was a man of God. We had pastors who always were great men of God, faithful to the word, and that was important to me as a young man. Certainly when I went away to college, seminary, there were men who were my professors and women that had an influence on me. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful for every one of those. And I have men today. I have 3 men in particular, close friends, that I can share anything with. And I know they'll pray. I know they'll help if there's something they can do to help. I know they will keep it in confidence. And I'm thankful for that. I need them. And I'm thankful for them today.
I'm sure that we can all think of, hopefully you can think of at least a few men in your life, if you're listening, that have impacted you that way. And if you don't have them, we're going to talk about some ways that you can find that maybe. But I have people like that in my life as well. There are a couple of pastors. I've been meeting with them, if we can, every week for 18 years. And these guys know everything about me. They walked through that whole time with me, as you did, of Kelly being sick and going home to be with the Lord. And then later on, when I started dating again and got remarried and brought 3 more kids into the mix instead of 3, because 3 kids isn't enough. We now have 6. But just the way that they have walked through everything I've been through with me. And you have done the same thing. And you talked about those men in your life that have done that. They've walked with you. And what would you say about that? How does walking with someone through the seasons of life help make a disciple?
Well, obviously every man needs someone that he can trust completely, that he can share any need in his heart, life, and know that they'll be there to listen. Sometimes they'll help you by advice. Most of the time, they help you by, I'm going to say, putting a hand on your shoulder and saying, I understand that, and I'll pray for you, and we know God will do something. And you need that. But I want to say something else too. And in the church today, most churches anyway, there's a really important ministry of small groups. Because men, we need to be with other men who are followers of Jesus. That will help you be a disciple and continue to become a disciple. So find a group of men like that you can be with and share with. And I know that this church has multiple groups like that. And I know a lot of churches that do. So find that. You need that. You need that community. More, and not just a community of the church. You need that. But you need this smaller community of people that you can trust. And you'll grow as a disciple because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that we have here, we do have small groups because we've moved from the Sunday school days, and now we have lots of small groups that meet here. They meet. I have one that meets in my home on a Thursday morning for men, and we have a few of those. We have 3 men's groups, and we're looking to build those in the next year or so. I would love to double or triple that, and so if you're looking for a group, you need to reach out to us. You can go to our webpage at highpointlw.com and look under the group life section. But if you're looking for that, I want to help you find that, because there are men out there that are looking, and we can certainly link you up with some other men like Jeff and I have been talking about. Jeff, I have a question for you about that. When you get into those small pockets of community, however they are, if they're at someone's home or at a church, or we've got one men's group that's starting this week that's going to meet at Bob Evans on Saturday morning for breakfast. How can you resist that, right?
Yeah.
Get you some biscuits and gravy and some Bible time, and you're good to go. But when you gather, wherever it is that you gather with other men, what are some of the methods of discipleship that you have seen people use over the years that you feel like have been effective in the churches you attended and the churches you served? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I really feel is important about those, that they are personal. In other words, I think a lot about what each of those men have to share in helping me become a better disciple. Now, that I think that there are books available to help lead a discipleship group, particularly for men. And I think those are good. I think it's a great tool to use. But I feel like nothing beats the personal relationships that you build in there. And you become a disciple. I mean, come on. Jesus took 12 men and he gathered them together for an intimate, personal teaching, relationship, discipleship. I think it still works. And I think we see that happening in small groups. And again, Jesus used the Old Testament to teach them. Well, there's a lot of material available for small groups, for men, to help each other grow into what God wants us to be.
Yeah, you're right about the different, curriculums and studies and methods and all of those things. Was there one that you tended to focus on and use throughout your ministry more than any other, or did you just kind of whatever you felt like the Lord was using you to use, or have there been certain things that you've used over time that you have felt have worked?
No, I wouldn't point to one thing. I've tried to use whatever was available and that God could use. I'm still reading books today about discipleship or about being a leader, and they're helpful. But one of the best books that I have read recently challenged the reader to lead like Christ. Wow. A lot of good books out there. But I'm pretty sure Christ has been the best leader of discipleship. Look at how he did it. Can we somehow replicate that? I think we can. And I do think that these other discipleship books, that's what they're trying to do.
Right.
But it does come back to Christ's example. There isn't any better than his example for us to follow.
And so in that example, it was, he certainly couldn't use Right Now Media or go to Amazon or christianbook.com and get the newest resource and get some DVD kits for that and some workbooks. So for him, discipleship was about inviting these men to follow him and doing life with him. And so, they fished and they went to weddings and they saw him heal, and they ate meals together and they fed thousands, or they just fed a few, or, all of those things. And so it's about the doing life part. that I think is the most important thing. If you want to become a disciple of Jesus as a man, then you've got to follow him, and you got to get around some other people that can help you with that.
Yeah.
You have to have someone that is maybe further along in their walk with him, and you've got to have someone like yourself, and then maybe you can bring some people along that are just starting, and they can learn more. And so when you're looking for that, those are just some helpful tools to look for. Anything else you want to add that you would want to tell someone about becoming a follower or a disciple of Jesus?
Well, first of all, let me say that I don't dismiss all of the technical things that are available to us. Like I'm sitting on a podcast. I mean, come on. I'm a kid from Wintersville, Ohio. I don't even know what a podcast was until a couple years ago, let alone talk on one. But listen, I'm getting to speak to some men that I'll never meet.
Right.
And God's given me this opportunity. You use all of that, but you never fail to remember that it is Jesus Christ. He's my Savior. He's my Lord, and he is leading me today in this discipleship. Use everything available, but always know that the Lord, he's the one that's going to continue to help you be a disciple. Small groups are great. Podcasts are great. Whatever means, it's all great. But there's nothing like that relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we're going to point people to become a disciple of Jesus, then that's something we need to be doing ourselves and spending time with him on our own. Talk about what you do in your own walk with Jesus to grow in your faith. You mentioned that you're still reading and still learning. What are some of those things that he's teaching you even now?
Yeah, I am amazed what God continues to do in my life. I don't know why I'm amazed. He's been doing it a long time. But I learned a long time ago, if I am going to help anybody else as a pastor, as a preacher, teacher, small group leader, if my relationship isn't up to date with the Lord, if I'm not still learning from him as a disciple, I'm never going to be able to help anybody else. And so it's important for me to have this personal time with the Lord. However, now it's much easier for me now at this age because I have free time. Didn't have a lot of free time in those 50 or some years in ministry, but I still had to find the time. So if my relationship isn't where it ought to be, I'm never going to be able to help anybody else. So I thank the Lord that he continues to teach me. I've read a lot of scriptures in the Old and the New Testament about getting old, because I'm old. And in fact, I'm reading a book right now that talks about finishing well. I'm really, that's on my heart. I mean, I don't know how long I have to live, but I want to finish well with the Lord and in his service. And so I want to keep learning from him. I want to continue to be his disciple and be taught by him. And that's what he's doing. And with all of those Old Testament, New Testament passages about getting old, faithfulness, his faithfulness to me and my faithfulness to him, I want to finish well in doing whatever God wants me to do.
That's great. I really appreciate you saying that, because I know that there are probably some people hearing and thinking, well, what does that mean for me? I'm not going to be called to be a pastor at a young age and leave my profession of choice and go to a Bible college. I'm not going to go to a missionary field. How do I become a disciple? How do I become a follower of Jesus? and do that my whole life and influence others and finish well. And so you've talked about this a little bit, but I want you to talk as we kind of wind up here to talk to that guy that's listening to this who is a welder or a construction foreman or a teacher like your grandson and a coach. He's following in your footsteps, or a real estate agent, or anybody that's in any field, any area that says, yeah, I want to start following Jesus. I don't know how. I don't know what that'll look like. I don't know how that will change my marriage or my family or my employment or where I live. Talk to them about that a little bit, about what they can expect and how they can stay strong in that all the way to the end.
Well, my dad became a Christian at a relative early age. Him and his brother got saved in a revival service in Steubenville, Ohio. Changed his life really forever. But he was a man who went to work every day. I was going to say 8 hours a day, but he worked in a steel mill, and they hardly ever worked 8 hours, okay? If you've never worked in a steel mill, and I have, it's quite an interesting atmosphere in which to work and to be a Christian. So I've heard men say, I just can't be a Christian where I am. Well, if you can't be a Christian there, maybe you can't be a Christian anywhere. Because I believe, because I saw it in my own father and other men, that you can be a Christian, a disciple of Christ, anywhere. And he needs disciples everywhere.
Right.
Coaching, steel mill, teaching, you name it. God can use you there. You can be his disciple there. Again, you're probably going to need some help along the way.
Sure.
From other men, church, so on. But wherever he calls you, thankfully, he doesn't call everybody to be a pastor. Wherever he calls you, you do that. You do that to the very best you can. God will honor it. He'll use you, and you'll continue to grow as a disciple of his.
Paul talks about that in Colossians 3, right, where he tells us that whatever you do it as if working for the Lord and not for men. And so, yeah, you are going to need some help to do that. And that's kind of the goal of this podcast. And I've got myself and this old pro, Jeff, with me now, and he's going to go back to Ohio and share with the staff that he's on, that he's an old pro at this. But I hope that you've learned something today. And, that's the goal of this podcast. Like I said from the top, we're trying to make disciples of men. We're trying to start igniting a fire or strengthening a fire within you that the Spirit of God is bringing about to help you be transformed by him, and that carries over into every area of your life, your finances, your relationship with your family, your neighbors, with whatever he calls you to do for a living, that wherever it is that you go, whatever it is that you do, you're doing it for him, and you're growing in your faith because of that. And you're influencing others to do that, just as you've heard Jeff talk about and how influential he's been in my life. Well, I want to thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Well, I guess I would,
okay.
Just to kind of wrap it all up. I'm thankful that the Lord isn't done with me yet. We sing a song. You guys might sing it here. And the words are, if I'm not dead, God's not done.
Right.
That's the way I look at my life right now. He's not done with me yet. And I'm still learning. It's amazing. And he's still teaching. What a blessing that is. I got to tell you, as you grow older, it's such a blessing that God still continues to teach, and I can still continue to learn. And finally, I want to say, because of the staff I serve on, a bunch of kids, they're all young enough to be my grandkids, maybe some of them my kids. But I see in them the fire of the Holy Spirit in their lives. Some people my age, they worry about the next generation. Oh, what's going to happen? We wring our hands, Well, I want to tell you something. God's raising up another generation and another generation. And he will continue to do that, and they will accomplish great things for God. I'm going to be gone before that all happens. But I know that the Lord is not finished. Not with me yet, and certainly not with these next generations. God's going to bless them in a wonderful way before he comes back.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing a little bit about your life and your calling and how God's using you today. And, it's just been a real blessing for me to spend time with you here. I get to spend time with you outside of here a lot. But to sit here with you and hear about how God's using you and how he's directing you and how he's working in you has just been a privilege to me to see and to witness and hear about. And I know it's going to bless others. Well, that is our time together. I do want to thank you for listening in to this episode of Making Disciples. Listen, I talked to you about it. If you have questions or comments or you want to reach out to us, you can find a link in the bio for this that you can reach out. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear what's on your heart and how we can help you as a man. But I want to thank you for listening to today and just for the way that you hopefully are listening to the voice of the Lord as well and how we're helping you do that. So we would love to hear from you. We're praying for you, and come back and listen again next time, and I'll talk to you later.